Mike, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, how are you doing?
Yes, very well, thank you. It's a happy Friday, although weather-wise it's not so bright. It's your typical grey smoke city London weather today.
Yeah,
How
I
about
was
you?
in London yesterday, and we had really good weather. Actually, I was pretty happy with that because we're out with the kids, so that makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm hoping the spring kicks in any day now. We'll have to wait and see. So, Mike, today we're going to talk about ranking results and answers. I'm titling this episode, Why Rank the Answer? And you have a very interesting profile. You're the co founder of Vexpower. You're also a prompt engineer. I'm curious because that is quite a new title. What does a prompt engineer do?
Yeah, good question. So I think it's honestly a bit of a made up title. I don't know if people are going to be calling themselves prompt engineers in 5 years. Some people will tell you that every job will be prompt engineering in 5 years. Other people will say prompt engineering is already dead. So it depends on who you talk to. But I think honestly, in 5 years, we're going to be thinking about this as like, calling yourself an Excel engineer. you know, I got my start in marketing really just by being very good at Excel. And then, I didn't call myself an Excel engineer back then, but it does help to, call yourself a prompt engineering today because that's like most of what I'm doing. I'm working with AI prompts, for companies who deploy AI in production, and helping them engineer better responses. So, it's not just about kind of finding the right magical words that will trick ChatGPT into doing the thing that you want it to do, but more about testing the system, A/B testing, actually, similar to the A/B testing that you do for, landing page testing or, Facebook ad creative, just applying a lot of those same principles to prompting ChatGPT and prompting Stable Diffusion, and all of these AI models. So, yeah, a lot of testing, a lot of learning, and then putting those insights into production, so that, the people I work with, their tools work better, their customers are happier, or, they just get more work done. They automate more of their work.
I suppose there was a demand for this, but what led you into this field, prompt engineering?
Yeah, so I used to run a marketing agency, growth marketing agency called Ladder. Like we built it up to 50 people, and then I happened to leave at the right time, really, in 2020, just before COVID happened. And I got access to GPT-3 at the same year. So, I was really lucky to, have both of those things kind of happen at the same time. I had a bit more time on my hands because we were all locked down. So I was playing around with, GPT-3. Back then you had to do a lot of stuff to trick it into working. So I wrote a blog post about prompt engineering, a couple of years later. That got picked up. I had been, painstakingly like documenting every piece of work that I was doing in my blog. I was doing a lot of marketing mix modeling back then, like marketing attribution stuff. I was doing a lot of like testing of creatives. I was doing a lot of marketing work, and it was taking I was working really hard to make those posts really, really good. I wrote one prompt engineering post and it took off, right? Like it became 80% of the traffic on my blog. It also led to a book deal with O'Reilly. My book's coming out, next month. A technical book on how to do prompt engineering with O'Reilly. And it also turned into a course for Udemy. So, we make, like, me and my partner James, we make a full-time salary, from that Udemy course. And then, pretty much all of my work ended up becoming prompt engineering after that. Like, I put like a little bit of effort into promoting it and then telling people what I was doing. And it just quickly, ate up all of my free time. And now I full time just work on, prompt engineering projects.
Wow. I I love hearing stories like this because it's fascinating to me and inspiring as well. Because something new such as AI just opens up an entire world. It revolutionizes search. I am someone who wholeheartedly believes that search is central to the web. And I've been
Mhm.
pondering this question I'm about to ask you. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It's an open question, but I just want to get your viewpoint on
Mhm.
it. Why do people search?
Mm. Yeah, good question. Why do people search? Fundamentally, we can only store so much information in our heads at any one time, right? So it's more efficient to look up information than it is to memorize it. And I think, I was one of those kids in school who, started using the internet and was thinking like, wait, why do I have to memorize this stuff? Like, why can't I use a calculator in the test, like, why can't I use, Google search? Why does it seem to be, labeled as cheating, right? To look stuff up. I kind of felt like every exam should be an open book exam, right? Cause what's valuable is not our ability to memorize, but our ability to synthesize and take lots of information from different places and bring it together to form an opinion, right? So, I would say, outsourcing that lookup to Google has been, really powerful, a really big productivity enhancer in my career. And, ChatGPT and AI revolution is really just kind of the next, step, further than that. But, just because we have AI now doesn't mean that, search is going away, right? Like, one of the most effective things you can do to improve the results you get from AI is to teach the AI how to search on your behalf, right? Some of the best performing LLMs, they're the ones that have search baked in, and they have a different name for it now. They call it retrieval augmented generation. But, or RAG, you might have heard that acronym. Essentially, you can take a model that is, fairly dumb, and give it access to the web, and, it will gain, 20 IQ points, because it's kind of like giving it an open book, answer, a way to answer the questions. Like, it's much better at just taking a bunch of information it got from a search and then synthesizing that to give you the answer than it is, just kind of trying to make something up. And, most of the hard work with working with AI and doing prompt engineering is that AIs will confidently make things up. It'll hallucinate, as people call it. So, giving, AI the ability to search is one of the major solutions, to solving that problem.
When I look at search these days and I look at the different platforms that have a search functionality, whether it's your typical one like Google, Bing, or things like TikTok, ChatGPT, I am seeing a big shift in the way results, or should I say, search satisfaction is delivered. I am seeing a
Mhm.
change from search results to search answers. When you're
Yeah.
engineering or working on prompt engineering, do you consider the results that you want to deliver to be answers or a list of sites or links for the user, the searcher, to carry out their research?
Yeah, good question. I think, the company doing the most in this space right now is Perplexity AI. They're who I use day to day for research. Is basically, replaced Google for me in a lot of ways. And one of the major things that they've gotten right, I think, is that they provide citations. So I think people do want answers. But they also still want the links, right? Like, they want to fact check. I want to be able to dive a little bit deeper into like how that answer was formulated. I think that's the thing that Google ironically is getting wrong, with their answer boxes, is that they're providing the answer, but they're not providing any credit for where the answer came from. And, ultimately we trust, the status of results completely differently if it came from, one person versus another, or if it came from a brand that we respect versus a brand that we haven't heard of. So I think that's something weirdly that Google is getting completely wrong. And Perplexity has gotten right. And I don't know if Perplexity is ever going to steal a couple of percentage points from Google, but, we'll see. But I think they're providing at least like a roadmap for how to do that. Similarly, I think that, ChatGPT has access to search, but it's not a great experience yet because, it doesn't always default to search. It doesn't always go look up the answers. Quite often it will hallucinate. And you have to really prompt it and tell it to go and search. And when it does search, it's kind of lazy in the way that it does it. It'll look up like one website at a time. It takes a while. So nobody really wants to wait for that. So I think that we want answers, but, just like, if you're an executive in a meeting, right? Like you don't want all of the, you don't want like your employee to, tell you all of the research that they did to find the answer, right? Like you just want the answer. And then if you get the answer and you're interested in that, then you want to dive a little bit deeper. But, based on the answer, you want to be able to decide whether to dive deep or not, like you can always grill that employee and say, okay, well, where did you get that number from? Like if you're telling me that, this is happening, like how did you formulate that opinion? You want to be able to interrogate that. And right now, LLMs on their own without search, they don't have, they don't know where they got that answer, right? It's like giving a presentation without providing a reference, links, so I think that's the key. You actually need both. You need answers and you need the links.
When I really got into search generative experience, last year, when I read Google's, if you like, manifesto around it, certain words sort of like popped out to me. One was speed, so speed of delivery, and another one was around them doing the heavy lifting, as in them carrying out the research for you to provide you with answers. And I started to think, okay, why is Google doing this, right? Who are they serving? And I think back to who they are serving, users. And then I relate their users to users of social media and the way social media has influenced the expectations of users. So I believe that the average searcher outside of the SEO industry, they expect that the platform that they're using to provide and have the answers for them. And if they do not have that, they tend to go elsewhere. And speed is a big factor. When we think of speed as marketers, we think of, okay, we want a website to load quickly to perform as efficiently as possible. That's one side of speed. The other side of speed is also the delivery of information. And users having that quickly is, I believe, becoming a high priority for the average searcher. When you're thinking of prompt engineering, I am assuming you have the average searcher in mind. From your point of view, what do you anticipate they seek from platforms when they search?
Yeah, good question. I would say that people have reasonable expectations around how long something will take. And they'll give you a lot more credit, or they'll give you a lot more like I guess like goodwill. If you assign latency to the right parts of the stack. And what I mean by that is what one funny anecdote I found early on, I used to work in the travel industry, was apparently Kayak actually slows down their search results when you're searching for flight, because they found that users prefer the search results if they have to wait for a few seconds. So I don't think it's all about speed, right? Like, I think, that, people, want to feel like, that it is taking its time to look for the right flight, right? Because, that's such a considered purchase. I'm spending, a few hundred, maybe even a few thousand on a flight. I want to know, that I did find the absolute best flight. So I would say in some situations, when the user cares a lot about the task, they might even want it to be slowed down. But for a lot of situations, when I'm busy doing something else and there's something blocking me and I just want to find the answer quickly, I don't want like ChatGPT to be yapping, instead of giving me a big long spiel and a disclaimer about how, what you're asking for might not be, safe or, I'm like, dude, just give me the answer, right? So I would say it really depends on the context of the user as to what they want. And I would say therefore that like a lot of the interesting use cases in AI are going to be around these kind of like AI agents that you start to build a relationship with, and they'll go off on your behalf and go search for things, right? So, if it's something simple, you want a really quick answer, but if it's something that you care about a lot, you want, this AI agent to kind of go off in your own, on your behalf and go do something. And I think it's not necessarily speed that people value. It's meeting their expectations, right? So, it's like when people complain about speed, it's usually when a website doesn't load very fast, right? Because they're like, in their mind, like the website should load fast. Like, I don't want all these crazy graphics. I just want to like get to the answer, right? There's a lot of kind of, system design, I think, that needs to happen in AI, where to kind of understand, from the user experience perspective, is this something that like the user needs a quick, but like a quick, but like, relatively rough, answer to this, or do they need me to go away and actually research it, or maybe we can kind of get the user from that quick answer and then progressively, look up more information to form a better answer. Like one other anecdote that always sticks in my mind related to speed is, one of the biggest ever bumps in people's ratings of how happy they were with the service of, Transport for London, the people who run the tube in London, the metro, if you're not from England. Then one of the biggest things they ever did to improve people's satisfaction with that is they added these signs that, tell you how long until the next train. Right. Because, they didn't speed up the trains, right? They didn't make them more reliable, right? Like they didn't keep them to a schedule. They just literally said like, okay, this train is 2 minutes away. This train is 4 minutes away. Right. And that's updated live. And the reason why that's important is, they could have sped up the trains, but like, that would cost billions of pounds, right? Like, people don't necessarily need speed. They just want to know how long it's going to wait. Yeah. They need to wait for the next one. And I would say like, that we're going to see a lot of kind of, user psychology baked into AI applications going forward where, ChatGPT might come back to you and say, okay, look, here's the quick answer, but if you want me to go research it, I can spend like a couple more minutes on this. And then if you want a really deep answer, then I'm going to spend a week and come back to you, right? I'm going to search everything on the web and summarize it for you, right? And I think it'll become a lot closer to, work, when you ask a question of your friend or your colleague, they anticipate how deep of an answer you need. Right. And one of the really interesting things I've seen in general, and you talked about social media, is, I have a lot of like, family in the area. Like I live near Liverpool. And, on social media, they don't go to Google, weirdly. I think this is crazy, but, it took me a while to figure out what they're doing. When they want a restaurant review or recommendation, or if they have like a question, they don't Google it. They just ask on Facebook. They ask, family members and friends on Facebook. They say, hey, has anyone been to like this place? Is it any good? To me, that's inefficient, but for them, they can afford to wait for the answer, and they know that like the people that are going to answer in their social group are their friends who understand how deep of an answer they want. Right. And they understand what their preferences are. So I think that it's not, speed isn't the only thing. It's also going to be about context. It's also going to be about personalization. So I think just focusing on speed is maybe missing parts of the equation.
That's very interesting. The platform that one uses is the one that they are more familiar and perhaps comfortable with. I've noticed it myself. The
Mm,
platform I use to search is dependent on my use case. I would say maybe 10 years ago, maybe even longer than that, Google was my default for everything, literally every single search, right? Now the search is dependent on what I am seeking. So if I'm looking for a product, I tend to use Amazon rather than Google. If I'm looking for a
mm.
video, I tend to use either, well, more recently TikTok or YouTube classically. And I'm noticing that my search behavior is changing dependent on what I am seeking. Do you see this as an impact to Google's dominance with their search product?
I think so. Yeah, I really do. Like one example I saw recently was just how often Gen Z and below use TikTok for search instead of Google. So if they're looking up, like, should I go to this restaurant or whatever, or what should I do they arrive in a new city and they say, okay, what should I do in New York or whatever? They're going to TikTok to see like real video of what's happening in that city, right? Or they want to see someone's real review, because
Yeah.
I think it provides a lot more contextual information. You can see the vibe, right? And you can get a sense. Like, I feel like video is harder to game as well. And like, we both have worked in SEO. So, we're part of the problem. We've been gaming the system for so long that like a lot of the search results, you can't trust them anymore, so I think that, that's happened to Google, unfortunately, over time. And that opens the door. Like people, I think with every market, there's always this cycle of fragmentation and then consolidation. And maybe we're just going through that cycle again. Like Jim Barksdale, one of the founders of Netscape, I think that they did their first internet browser. One of the things he said is that there's only two ways to make money: bundling and unbundling. So I feel like that's happened, right? Like Google has like kind of bundled the whole web into search, and now search is being unbundled to TikTok, to Perplexity, to ChatGPT, to Amazon, to all these different services. And we're going to have different relationships with those different services. And then maybe, the cycle will come back again and someone else will bundle all that stuff up. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it's part of the natural, way we work, because when there's one major platform, then everyone tries to game it, right? And then when it gets gamed, then it spreads out to all these other platforms, that are smaller targets and less likely to be dominated by marketers ruining everything.
Yeah, these big tech companies are unbundling, and ironically, they're also, in a sense, creating their own ecosystem, which is very interesting to me because TikTok is not just a competitor of Google search, they're competitors of Amazon as well. They're competitors of a
Mm.
variety of different big, huge companies that, if they I always say TikTok, if they were American, US, Google would most likely have at least attempted to buy them out, either Google or Facebook, or probably both.
Yeah, yeah, I think they would love to, but with the current kind of political climate in the US right now, mergers and acquisitions are kind of impossible to get through. Is from what I understand. Like Lena Khan, I think she's the FTC chairman. Like she's basically gone after like every major acquisition, and tried to stop it from happening, or tried to sue. And there was even talk of like people like going back retroactively and telling Facebook they need to unbundle Instagram. But like it's crazy because when they bought Instagram, it was 14 people. It was like tiny user base, and they deserve a lot of credit for growing it. But yeah, I would say the days are gone where you can just go and buy one of the startups and then stop them from disrupting you. And that's good because it opens up the playing field. Who knows what's going to happen with TikTok though, because right now they're talking about banning it or forcing a sale. Although I suspect they won't allow it to be sold to one of the major social platforms, right? I doubt that Google would be approved to buy it. I doubt that Facebook would be approved to buy it, or Meta. So I suspect it will be bought by like a traditional media company, who are trying to get into the technology space. So we'll see what happens with that. But, whatever happens, there's going to be a lot of disruption in the market.
Oh yeah, definitely. When prompt engineering, the language for it, is it dependent on the platform? So, for example, if you're prompt engineering on LinkedIn, is it the same as ChatGPT?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, obviously everyone's coming out with their own AI models now. Some are white labeling, ChatGPT. So they're using the GPT-4 API. Some are using, like, there's obviously alternatives like, Anthropic Claude is as good as GPT-4. And a lot of people are using that, or developing a preference for that. There's also open source models. So Meta released Llama 3 recently, and that's really good as well. And that's completely free. Like, you can actually build your own business on that, right? Like, it's open source. So there has been unbundling of these AI tools as well. Like, OpenAI isn't the only game in town. And each one of these models does work slightly differently. I find that they're almost developing their own personalities and feature sets. So, for example, when you're prompting Claude, which is by Anthropic, it actually really helps to use XML, like, like HTML. If you're an SEO, you'll know what HTML is, right? But just putting like, like basically like labeling the different parts of the prompt, like instructions, like make up your own HTML is the way I think about it. That works really well to improve the results you get from Claude, because it was trained using markup like that. You can actually, one really cool trick is, you can ask it to output its thinking first, and then it will, and then provide the answer, and it will give you some like basic HTML, like, it'll say thinking in there, and then it will close the thinking tag. And you get to see its thoughts, of like what it thought through before it gave you the answer. And that actually improves the response that you get. I would say they're all relatively different in terms of, like, you can't just take one prompt and it will work the same on every tool right now. Although that will converge, and these tools will get very similar functionality. They will all kind of standardize eventually. But what does work is the same principles apply to every single prompt. I mentioned I recently wrote a book for O'Reilly about this and the course. They're all based on these 5 principles that, things that essentially always work. Like one of them is, just providing examples of the task you want it to do. That always gives you a good boost, 20 points in accuracy, like in terms of performance. So just provide at least one, maybe up to 3 examples, of the task you're trying to get it to do. And you will, solve a lot of the problems that you're having, with these tools. Giving it direction, basically briefing the AI on what you want it. Just like as an SEO, you're briefing the writer on what type of content you want. You need to be able to brief, ChatGPT as well. And then, there's a bunch of these other principles, but essentially, those are transferable across models and across, they'll still work with GPT-5 when that comes out. But the actual words you use, will change, over time.
The more I think about businesses wanting to improve their AI, if you like, their AI knowledge, and hiring folks like yourself to build out their capabilities for this, the more I realize it's really spreading or changing SEO as an industry. And of course, it will change, not just for businesses who will use AI technology, but also for the average non-marketer. And I can envision marketing or marketers and non-marketers, the line between them almost blurring. Especially with stuff like the course that you've put out, right? It's if someone's interested in something like prompt engineering, they can use your course and um, help themselves, which is a great thing. How will
Mhm.
SEOs, how do you envision SEOs will have to adapt to this new reality we're quickly headed into?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think that the scale of the change and also the impact of the change will be very similar to what happened with the internet. So, when I started my career, internet advertising was like 5% of ad spend. Basically like a rounding error. Like, I used to, my first job was working in Google Ads, for Car Phone Warehouse, and a few others. I was spending like $10 million a year on Google Ads. It was like a really great learning curve. But at the time, that was like a very tiny budget for the clients I was working with, right? It was their smallest channel, it
Hmm.
was an experimental budget, basically. Now it's like
Yeah,
60% of ad spend. That's changed quite a bit.
yeah.
But what's happened, during that time is that, the middle has been hollowed out. We went from, you'd have, a lot of people who worked in marketing, and, a lot of their jobs were like, they need to call up, the agency, or the agency needs to like call up a publisher and say, hey, will you do me a deal on ads? Like I need to, get this done. Right. The people were doing that all day long. And then when Google Ads came around, what happened is, now you could do it self-serve. All of the people at the lower end of the scale, like all the small advertisers, just started doing it for themselves. They didn't need a agency, right? They didn't need to like call up a publisher, right? Negotiate deals. They could just put a credit card and start advertising, right? The same thing, but then all the top end people, they got so much scale from the switch to digital, it made sense for them to hire whole teams just devoted to this, and put developers on that team and automate Google Ads, right? Like a company like Booking.com, spending over $1 billion a year on Google. They have a huge team that reports directly to the CEO of like rocket scientists basically working on this, right? So you have a lot of people who go really hard, and they do it at the top end. They get all of the gains, and you have all the people at the bottom end who are small businesses. They get a ton of gains because now they can do it themselves instead of hiring an agency. But everyone in the middle gets wiped out, right? So everyone who was like okay at advertising before is like now like retrained into a different industry, right? Or like I don't know what happened to them, and same thing happened with content marketing, right? Like when blogging came out, and like you could publish blog content, now you didn't have to have a relationship with an editor at the New York Times, right? Like you could just publish on your own website. So you had some people at the very high end who, without gatekeepers, they could suddenly scale. Like you have a bunch of people whose job it is now to be a blogger or to be a video blogger, like they're a YouTube star or whatever. And they didn't need to ask anyone's permission. And now like Mr. Beast is massive, right? Like you have, in the content space, you have a lot of people on Substack who, never needed to ask any permission from a publisher, and they may actually have bigger circulation than the New York Times now in some cases. But then at the same time, you have smaller businesses who just published. They could just publish on their blog. Like I was one of those people. Ladder, my agency, we got 60% of our leads through our content. It's because we didn't have to hire a content agency, right? We just published ourselves. We were talking about what we were, doing for our work, and that brought in enough leads, in order to build a 50-person business, right? What got hollowed out was all the people in the middle. People were like average at blogging, people at average writers, like got screwed, because, all the low end stuff people just started writing for themselves, and all the high end stuff, the best writers in the world got paid more, but the average writers got hollowed out. And I think the same thing's going to happen with AI. So, now that AI can do a lot of pretty good marketing tasks for you. Like it can write pretty decent content. It could design a pretty good image. It can do a lot of the things like that you would normally, hire a junior member of the team for. And therefore there's going to be a lot of businesses who just think, why do I need to hire anyone in marketing? I actually don't even need a marketing department anymore. I just ask ChatGPT to write my social posts, right? And I've seen that already, for a lot of forward thinking businesses. The small businesses are going to benefit because they're going to have a lot more productivity. Now they don't have to have all that fixed costs of a marketing agency, So I would say if you're average at marketing, then you should probably start retraining now. Like either start using AI, or find another career field where you can be at the very top end of the distribution. You like there's this distribution, right, curve. You want to be at either end, right? Like I call it the barbell strategy, right? You don't want to be in the middle. You want to be you either want to be like, a novice in a topic, or a novice in lots of topics, or you want to be like an expert, like one of the best in the world at one topic, right? Like you don't want to be in the middle.
Yeah, totally agree. And I can see SEOs even more niching down into specific areas. Now we have your tech SEOs, your content SEO, off-page SEO specialists, link builders, or what have you. I think it's going to get even more granular than that, super granular, and I'm all for it because it expands the industry, which I love.
Mike. Yeah, exactly. I had one of the things I think about. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just before we get on to that, like one of the things I think about with this is Yeah. One of the things I think about with this is, I used to work at ShopStyle, which was a big fashion affiliate website, owned by Pop Sugar. We had, 8 million product pages. We basically scraped like every retailer in the US and, we built SEO pages for everything. And then we would make money from affiliates, right? It was a pretty big business. We had about 500 employees, right? And, one of the things I think about is, there was a guy that we hired as a consultant. He ran the blog Blind 5-Year-Old, which is like a really classic, like amazing technical SEO blog. And, what he did for us, was he would actually, be in our, product, teams, our trackers, right? Like if you imagine whenever you're making a change to the website, you have like Jira or Asana or, Monday.com, whichever one you use. He would sit in there and review every ticket. And then he would pop up and be like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's going to really kill the SEO for this website. And I feel like, that's something that like, you could automate with AI in theory, right? But if you did automate it with AI, the CEO wouldn't listen to it. He might ignore it, right? But because, the CEO read this guy's blog and thought this guy is really smart, I trust him to be responsible for this. Then, the CEO trusted his recommendations and he would like push through, like he gave him authority, right? So I would say that, there's still a lot of work out there for SEOs who build that trust with, the decision makers, and they have that authority, to the point where like, even if maybe they would use AI to automate a lot of their work, but if they're in control, they pull the trigger and they're the ones that say, look, I give my stamp on this. Like this is a good recommendation. This is a bad recommendation. You can have AI making the recommendations. That's fine, but you're not going to replace the trust. Right. You still need to build that authority. You still need a CEO, or a CIO or CTO who looks at you as like the person responsible for making sure we don't do stupid SEO stuff,
Indeed. Mike, Vexpower, you're the CEO and co-founder. What solutions do you provide?
Yeah. So, it's funny I know I label myself as CEO, but it's just like me and one other guy. So it's not, we're not a big team. It's more of a lifestyle business, to be honest. When I left the agency, one of the big problems we had, was that, because we were most of the people we hired were junior and it was their first marketing job. So we invested a lot in training. And one of the real problems we had was just getting people up to speed quickly. And therefore when I left, one of the burning desires was I need to basically create the training that I wish that I had time to create at the agency. We built Vexpower to be this kind of subscription service where if you are one of these data driven, marketers, if you are technical, you know how to code, or a little bit of code, or you want to learn more code, then that's your place to subscribe to. And basically every course is something that either I personally experienced a problem and then solved it, and I provide that solution and teach you how to do it, or my co-founder James, who is more on the SEO side. Actually, he was more on technical SEO. I was more paid ads, landing pages. I was more of a generalist, right? So we put that together, and we still publish a new course every week. But it's very niche, right? So it's, there's not that many marketers who, are data driven and technical, to the point where they actually want to kind of do technical solutions to things, that haven't already risen to management, so, I obviously rose to management, but I wanted to a part of the reason I left Ladders was I wanted to stop managing people so I'd have more time to do technical solutions. So it is pretty niche. We make enough to pay the mortgage basically from that, but it's we only work on it part time. We also, do consulting for clients. We also have our course. We just finished writing the book. So, it's one of many projects. I never know which project to put down, but that one is pretty close to my heart because, it's solving a real problem that I had, and for the people who fit into that bucket, it's like a godsend, I've had people be like, oh, I got promoted because I did one of your courses, and I pitched that solution to the CEO. Nice. And he loved it, right? So it's we're a small tribe, but it's a real passion project for me.
When it comes to courses and content, I feel there's this phrase that's very popular now, which is every business is now a media business as a default. You have content, it's commodified now. Businesses seem to be in a content race, all businesses. Users benefit, information somewhat is free. As a content provider, where do you draw the line between information that's free and information that's paid for?
Yeah, really good question. Cause I've thought about this a lot, as you can imagine. We took that whole, theory to heart at Ladder, right? Like I mentioned before, 60% of our leads came through our blog, but actually 90% of our leads mentioned our blog. So it assisted with pretty much every conversion for us, we actually I still have people today who reach out and they're like, I read your blog for years at Ladder. I've been following you since then, and I just saw that you're working on this now. Can we talk? So there's a real long tail to that. We built a lot of awareness through that. So I would say there's a huge benefit to being a media business or thinking about yourself as a media business, even if what you're selling isn't necessarily media, right? And actually media businesses are pretty poor business models these days. So unless you're selling something else more profitable, then it's pretty hard to afford writers, and it's pretty hard to afford to take a day off work every week to write something. So I would say media business, media is really good for distribution, but you need to find something more profitable to sell, right? The way I think about it is, that it's like sales, but at scale. So if I go to a coffee meeting and I go to an event and I talk to one person, and they're really impressed with what I said to them because I gave them an answer, then that's great, and I might win that client, right? Or maybe typically you'd win like 1 in 3 clients, right? But if I come on this podcast and I talk to you, then maybe thousands of people will get the benefit from the answers I gave, right? And I don't know, like some of those people might be, people I end up working with in the future, and you put enough of that stuff out there, and all that long tail comes back to you, right? So I do think that people need to think of themselves really as a media business. I would say, there's 2 major things you have to think about in terms of getting the balance right though. One is that, broad topics should be free and niche topics should be expensive. So what I mean by that is, if you're talking about, so like we do this at Vexpower. Like if we have something which is like, how to A/B test prompt on ChatGPT. That's something that like pretty much anyone could use. And we would make that free, because it's a wide funnel, right? Like, and there's keyword traffic for that, right? And that brings in a bunch of people. And then they'll look at our other courses and go, okay, that course is pretty good. Like, but like, let's find something that's more specific to my problem that I'm having right now. If I did a post on, I did a course on not just marketing mix modeling, but like a specific part of marketing mix modeling. It was Bayesian, so Bayesian statistics to do marketing mix modeling. So if you think about like the funnel here, you have like marketing, right? And then you have like marketing attribution, which is a small part of marketing, right? Figuring out, which marketing channels are performing. And then within marketing attribution, you have marketing mix modeling, which is one of like 3 or 4 major techniques people use. And then within that, there's like, the type of statistics you use to do the modeling is Bayesian statistics. That's only like, say, 10% of the marketing mix modeling industry itself, right? So I had this course on this one tiny sliver, right? And if anyone is really interested in that, like there's actually very little information online about it, right? And I figured it out by reading the documentation for different things and like reading some textbooks and then like figuring out how to do it for myself. And therefore I put a course out on that. It's never going to be worth it to me to put a free course out there because there's so few people that, are interested in that niche topic, that like, they'll read it and they'll be great, whatever, it's not going to do anything to bring in new people, right? It might bring in at most 2 or 3 people. But those 2 or 3 people, that might save them like 12 weeks of work, right? and they're willing to spend $30, $50, whatever, to save 12 weeks worth of work. So that's how we kind of think about it. We go, okay, like broad stuff. If I put a broad topic out there, I get some marketing benefit, right? So I'm happy to put it out there for free. But if I put a very niche topic out there that there's no competition, like nobody else is writing about, then I should charge for that. Right. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind. Yeah. And then the other thing you need to keep in mind in terms of getting the balance right is that you need to make sure your content is good, and actually actionable for people. You need to be doing real things in the real world. I think that, it's a real shame that a lot of the really popular marketing books out there are written by people who aren't doing marketing right now, it's more entertainment. Yeah. It's more entertainment than it is actual knowledge, right? I would say like if it's been a long time since someone has run a campaign, you shouldn't trust what they're saying, right? Like I was amazing at paid ads, 3 years ago. But like if I tell you anything about paid ads right now, you should ignore it, right? Because I haven't run a campaign for a couple of years. So I would say that like I never create courses, about something that I'm like not actively doing myself. Because, you can't, like, you need some sort of balance there. Like, if all you're doing is work, right? Like, if all you're doing is running campaigns and running SEO campaigns, right? And you never talk about it, that's really bad because then nobody knows all this amazing knowledge you have. But if all you're doing is talking about it and not actually running any campaigns, then that's also really bad, right? Because you're just talking crap, right? Like, you don't actually have a good sense of what works, what doesn't work. So I say the right ratio is about 20%. So what I try and do, and what I did at Ladder, was I have 1 day out of 5 in a week, right? Like, work 5 days a week. You take 1 day off to do content, right? And I think that's about the right ratio, because you're spending 4 days learning and like figuring out, what's important to solve. And then you're spending 1 day just like putting that out there. And I think if you get that balance right, then your content's going to be good enough, and like entertaining enough, for people. But like, you're actually really going to teach them something that they can use, because it's coming straight from the source of someone who's in it day to day,
Absolutely fascinating, Mike. You're well versed in digital marketing, lastly. You've seen search evolve, right? Users are a lot more savvy now. Generative AI is a thing. As a marketer, where from here?
Yeah. How do I answer that? I mean, nobody can predict the future. And like, who knows what's going to happen? Like, GPT-5 could drop tomorrow, and maybe none of us will ever have to work again. I don't know. Who knows? But I would say, every new revolution ends up looking like the old one. In some respects, there's a pattern to history, right? I would say, based on that, probably what's going to happen is that some of the channels that are really saturated and are better for marketers than they are for users will go away, and they'll start to, like, people will start to migrate from, say, Google search to some sort of AI solution, right? And maybe Google pulls it off, right? And maybe Google is, they manage to disrupt themselves. Facebook has done that successfully. Like, every one of these executives has read, Clayton Christensen, and they know their stuff, right? Like, they know what's going to happen if they allow themselves to be distributed, to be disrupted, right? So like, Facebook, I think one of the first companies in history to successfully defend itself from disruption, right? Like, they saw mobile happening, and then people don't remember, but Facebook was terrible at mobile. You couldn't even run ads on mobile. Their mobile app was super buggy, like, didn't work. People were like, their stock was depressed for a while, because people were like, are they ever going to figure out mobile? Which is hilarious now, because they're the best at mobile now. Like, they're the experts, world experts in mobile. Like, most of their traffic is mobile. They're the only company to figure out mobile ads successfully, right? And monetize them well. So like, Facebook successfully headed off that path. They also headed off the path of, like, like ATT, like, tracking, problems. Like, they've managed to, like, figure that out as well. They managed to, like, destroy Snapchat with video and everything, right? Like, Facebook have been great at doing this, and that kind of gives me some hope that maybe Google will solve this problem, and they won't allow themselves to be disrupted in search. Because I've, a lot of love for Google, and I've used their products for a long time, and certainly had a lot of benefit from them as a company over time. But like, there is a chance of disruption here, right? And I think, if the interesting thing, though, I would say, because people ask me, like, well, if everyone's going to start using AI for search, then what do we do? What's the new SEO, right? Like, what do we do in order to get our content ranked by AI? Ironically, it's basically the same stuff we have been doing, right? Like, it's not like, this is probably the first time we've had a platform shift where you don't really have to change the strategy, because ultimately the AI is using search. They use, like, ChatGPT uses Bing search, right? Under the hood. Google's, Gemini uses Google search under the hood. Perplexity, I believe they're using, I'm not sure what they're using, actually. Maybe they built their own, but they, they're all using search under the hood. So if everything you're doing to rank in search is also going to make sure that your content features in AI as well. But I would say one minor caveat is that you need to think a little bit more about brand, because, you know, if your brand is knowable, right? And it's something that like you know, when it comes up in search results or citations, that like people recognize you, that's going to be kind of important now. More important than it was, in the search results game. So like, I'll give one example to kind of finish up on. I invented a new framework for writing social posts as part of a book I was writing. And you know, I could have just like called it this framework, right? Like I could have just like, as part of the book, I could have just written about this framework of like, here's how you write a social post, right? And instead I made up a specific name for it, the bait and hook framework, right? So if you ask like, you know, if you ask ChatGPT now, it has actually indexed that post, and it actually knows, it can explain to you what that framework is, right? If you ask it, right? So it's yeah, bait hook reward payload is what the title of the article was, right? So if you actually ask it like, and actually, I've had it come up a few times. Like I'll ask it, like, how would you write a social post, you know, based on this, and it will come back with some of the stuff that I wrote, right? Without attribution right now, unfortunately. But yeah, so it made me think about like, more and more we should be like inventing new brands. Like you know, like SEO is great for this. The Brian Dean's skyscraper technique, right? Like the fact, like the really valuable thing he did there was not necessarily that he wrote a really great post, but he gave it a name, and then people use that name, right? And they remember that name. And now if you ask ChatGPT for SEO tactics, it might actually recommend the skyscraper technique, right? So that's giving attribution back to him because people know, you know, he invented that name, right? So I would say that's the only kind of major thing I want you to think about a little bit more, with the shift to AI, is that like brand is going to be more important. If you have a brand name that the AI can recall, you know, and that people can recognize when they see it, then, you know, you're going to own a little slice of the internet, right? You're going to own a little slice of everyone's brains. You know, so I think that's going to be more and more important. It was already important before, you know, because if you invent it's a new term, then you can rank number one for it. You know, but I would say there's going to be more important in the future.
Yeah. Mike, fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being on. Very quickly, where's the best place for people to find you online?
I'm always on Twitter, or X, if you want to call it that now. I'm hammer, underscore MT, is my username. And then, also on, brightpool.dev, is like, where I start to like showcase, all the different projects. There's vexpower.com is one of those projects, and the book and the course. So you'll find all the links, on brightpool.dev.
Awesome. I'll also include it in the description as well. Mike, thank you so much for being on. Have a brilliant day, and thank you for a brilliant conversation.
All right. Thanks.